He told her to calm down. Then he called for backup. 5 minutes later, her briefcase was ripped open, her laptop shattered, and her arms twisted behind her back. She was barefoot, bleeding, and surrounded in the middle of her own office building. Her crime? Entering a locked conference room that she had booked. The worst part? Her name was printed on the door, but none of them had read it. Or maybe they had. And that was the point. Subscribe and tell us where you're watching us from. The elevator stopped on the 34th floor. Danielle Clarke stepped out, her heels clicking on the marble, her jacket damp from the sudden downpour outside. A cup of coffee in one hand, a laptop bag in the other. She wasn't late. In fact, she was 12 minutes early. Room 3410. That's what the email said. That's what the building's management confirmed. Her name, Danielle Clarke, lead compliance consultant, was printed on a board outside the glass door. But inside the room were 3 white men. One turned. Then he stared. "Can we help you?" he asked. Danielle smiled politely. "Yes, I believe this is my reserved seat. Clarke and Associates. I work 11 to 2 today." The man glanced at her badge. "Are you food service?" That stopped her. "Excuse me. Or maybe the amenities. The cleaners." Danielle froze. Her jaw clenched. "I'm Danielle Clarke. I booked this room. My name is on the door." He glanced at the other 2 men. "That can't be happening. We've been here since 10. Let's call security." "That won't be necessary," she said firmly. "This is my firm's quarterly audit meeting. I suggest you check with the front desk." But it was too late. The man was on the phone. "Yes. Floor 34. We have a person in confined space who refuses to leave." "No, not aggressive. Not yet. Just difficult." Danielle's heart pounded. She took a step back. "I'll wait in the hallway until this is resolved," she said calmly. She didn't have a chance. 2 security officers arrived within 2 minutes. One asked her for identification. She did. They didn't even look at it. The second reached for her hand. "Ma'am, I need you to come with me. I work here," she said. "You're making a mistake." "We'll handle this downstairs," the first said. As she pulled away, the handcuffs popped off. By the time she was dragged through the elevator doors, her coffee was spilled on her blouse, her laptop bag was torn, and one of her shoes was missing. And still no one asked her name, because they'd already decided who she was. The holding room smelled like laminate and bleach. Danielle sat with one hand cuffed to a metal loop beneath the table. Her hair clung to her face. Her laptop, now cracked along the hinge, lay on a chair across the room. No one had spoken to her for 17 minutes. She watched the red light blink on the corner camera. Recording. But for who? The door opened. A man in a black polo entered, flipping through a printout. "Miss Clarke?" Danielle didn't answer. He glanced up. "You're not on the visitor log for today." Danielle looked him dead in the eye. "I don't need to be. I'm a tenant. Clarke and Associates, LLC. Suite 3421. Leaseholder since October." He blinked. "You're the tenant?" "Yes. The room I reserved today is on the internal booking system. Confirmed. Paid. Authorized." The man shifted, suddenly unsure. "Do you have proof?" She motioned with her cuffed wrist. "In my laptop, which you ripped open in the hallway." He looked toward the glass, where a second guard stood watching. "Wait here." "I'm not going anywhere," she said flatly. It took another 45 minutes before the building manager arrived. This one wore a suit. "Miss Clarke, I apologize. This appears to be a misunderstanding." Danielle didn't speak. "We've reviewed the digital log. Your room was, in fact, reserved. There seems to have been a scheduling conflict." "A scheduling conflict?" Her voice was ice. "I was handcuffed, dragged barefoot through the lobby. Labeled, unregistered. I lost client files when my machine was dropped." He cleared his throat. "We're, of course, prepared to replace the laptop. That's not what I want." The man shifted uncomfortably. "Then what do you want?" Danielle leaned forward. "Names of the 3 men in my reserved space. Names of both security officers. And I want a copy of your building's escalation protocol signed and timestamped." The manager straightened. "I'm not sure we can know." "Then get sure. I'm filing a formal discrimination report with your ownership board. And if I don't receive the requested documentation by 5 p.m. tomorrow, I will serve a notice of litigation. You have my email. You have my lawyer's contact. And, Mr. Mason?" He blinked. "Yes? Next time, make sure your security guards know what the name on the door means." She stood. No one tried to stop her this time. But no one offered her a towel. No apology. No acknowledgement of what had just happened. Because deep down, they didn't believe they'd done anything wrong. And that was exactly what she was about to use against them. By Thursday morning, Danielle had everything she needed. She sat at her dining table in sweatpants and a t-shirt. The cracked laptop now connected to an external monitor. On the screen, building regulations, commercial lease obligations, and corporate tenant protections under California Civil Code. To them, she had just been a woman in the wrong room. What they hadn't checked was her resume. Danielle Clarke, J.D., former Risk Compliance Officer at Levinson Grant. Certified in Title VII Litigation Support. 15 years in legal operations. She didn't raise her voice. She raised liability. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as she compiled a 14-page formal complaint. Sent it to the building's property manager, the corporate owner's legal counsel, the human capital lead of the security subcontractor. Subject line: formal notice of discriminatory misconduct. Incident March 21st, 25. Attached: timestamped security footage requests. A list of 8 building violations. Preliminary notice of tort action. She didn't ask for damages. She demanded disclosure. At 2:13 p.m., she received her first response. A polite but hollow statement from Mason Properties. We take tenant safety seriously. We regret the incident and are investigating. No further comment at this time. By 3:42 p.m., her phone rang. Ms. Clarke? This is Michelle Porter. I oversee legal risk for the building portfolio. Danielle didn't let her finish. Is this a call to offer settlement? No. I wanted to hear your concerns directly. My concerns were in the email. What you really want is to find out how loud I plan to be. Michelle exhaled. Can we speak off record? Danielle's voice didn't waver. No. A pause. Then let me ask plainly. What do you want? Danielle smiled faintly. I want a recorded admission that your staff bypassed policy based on visual bias. I want disciplinary action against every party who escalated. And I want your parent company to issue new guidelines on tenant recognition protocols, with implicit bias training included. Michelle hesitated. You're asking us to admit fault in writing. I'm not asking. I'm offering you a chance to do the right thing before I go public. Silence. I'll get back to you. That evening, Danielle opened a new document. Subject: notes for formal filing. If they refuse. At the top, she wrote 2 sentences. They thought I was the assistant. They didn't know I wrote the contract. Below that, she began listing her next steps. Not to prove she belonged, but to make sure this never happened to anyone again. Friday, 8:47 a.m. Inside the boardroom of Mason Corporate Holdings, 5 executives sat in silence, staring at a projected email. Subject: escalated incident, legal exposure risk, Clarke and Associates. A junior associate broke the silence. She copied the building's insurance carrier. Someone swore under their breath. Another added, and the leasing regulator. She skipped PR. She went straight to liability. At the head of the table, Michelle Porter spoke carefully. She knows exactly what she's doing. She's not threatening us. She's building record. They had reviewed Danielle's complaint 3 times. It wasn't angry. It wasn't dramatic. It was surgical. Every claim was backed by time-stamped evidence. Every accusation linked to a specific policy failure. And worst of all, her tone was calm. Calm meant control. Control meant intent. And intent meant exposure. Can we offer a revised apology? Someone asked. With internal action? Michelle shook her head. She won't settle for statements. She wants policy change. If we don't act now, we're looking at media fallout, or worse, investor scrutiny. No one moved. Because Danielle Clarke wasn't yelling. She was watching. Across the city, Danielle sat in a small downtown cafe. Earbuds in. Notes open. She sipped green tea while typing her final addendum. No formal accountability has been issued by any party. Time since incident, 96 hours. 0 transparency. 0 correction. She uploaded the document to a secure Dropbox and set permissions to view only, shared with legal counsel. Then she made one more move. She forwarded everything, every letter, email, demand, to a former colleague. Adrian Simmons, Director of Risk, Weston Equity Group. Mason Holdings primary investor. Subject line: investor note, pattern of escalation in your asset portfolio. No threat, no opinion, just facts. And 2 attachments. 1. Her formal complaint. 2. A list of other tenants who had quietly reported biased treatment in the same building. She didn't need headlines. She needed pressure from above. By 5:18 p.m., Michelle Porter's phone rang. Mason Legal, Porter. The voice on the other end was low, controlled. Michelle, this is Adrian Simmons. We received a concerning packet about your downtown property. I suggest we speak before this turns into a reputational crisis. Michelle closed her eyes. Danielle had made her move. Quiet, strategic, impeccably timed. And now, the walls were closing in. Monday morning, Danielle stood in front of a narrow mirror, adjusting a pearl earring. No makeup, no armor, just a gray suit that fit like intent. At exactly 9 a.m., she walked into the same building that had cuffed her 5 days earlier. Reception froze. The same front desk guard who hadn't looked her in the eye now stood bolt upright. "Good morning, Miss Clarke," he said quickly. She gave a nod. Nothing more. But today she didn't go to her office. She went up to the 38th floor. Weston Equity Group. They owned half the tower. She didn't need an appointment. Adrian Simmons met her at the door. "I got your email," she said calmly. Danielle nodded. "I wasn't looking for a favor. Just a pattern." Adrian gestured toward the glass-walled conference room. Inside sat 3 people, 2 corporate lawyers, and 1 man in a blue suit with a flushed face. Danielle recognized him immediately. The one who had called security. He didn't stand, didn't speak, just stared. Adrian opened the door and looked at Danielle. "You have 5 minutes. No lawyers. No spin. Just tell them what you want." Danielle stepped inside, closed the door, looked at the man who had humiliated her. "You called me difficult. That was the word in your report." He shifted. "You escalated me without checking a single credential." Don't speak. Just listen." Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "I built my firm from nothing. I leased 2 full offices in this building. I pay early. I file clean. I mind my business." She pointed toward the screen behind him. "And I also advise companies on how to handle liability exposure before it explodes in their face." Silence. She took a step closer. "What you did to me wasn't a mistake. It was a habit, and I'm going to break it." The man's lips parted, but no words came out. Danielle turned to Adrian. "I don't want a check. I don't want a sorry. I want system change." Adrian nodded once. "You'll have it." Danielle walked out without looking back. Downstairs, she finally returned to her office. A package waited on her desk. Inside, a sealed copy of Mason Holdings' revised protocol policy. A note on top, and signed. "Effective immediately. Thank you for forcing our hand." She smiled. Only slightly. Because this wasn't about force. This was about reminding them who writes the rules. And that her name on the door wasn't decoration. It was authority. By Thursday, the building looked the same. Same polished floors. Same elevators. Same front desk. But everything had changed. The 3 men from room 3410? Gone. Officially, relocated. Unofficially, fired under Internal Clause 14.3, breach of ethical standards in tenant relations. Danielle didn't celebrate, because none of them apologized. She sat at her desk, scrolling through a PDF of the newly issued bias response policy, now required reading for all building contractors and security vendors. It was clean, legal, sanitized, but it was missing one word. Racism. They still couldn't say it. Even now. Even after it cost them 6-figure contracts, 1 investor ultimatum, and a complete rewrite of the way they treated people in suits with skin darker than ivory. Danielle highlighted the phrase, cultural sensitivity, then deleted it, then typed, racial accountability. She didn't need them to be comfortable. She needed them to be honest. That afternoon, a tenant from another floor knocked on her door. An older black woman, mid-50s, soft-spoken. "Are you Miss Clarke?" Danielle looked up. "Yes." The woman stepped inside carefully. "I just wanted to say thank you. I've worked in this building for 11 years. I clean after hours. I've been questioned at least once a month. They used to ask for ID even when I was in uniform." Danielle's face softened. "What changed?" The woman smiled faintly. "This week, they called me ma'am." Danielle didn't answer. She didn't need to. The next day, Danielle received an invitation. A closed-door roundtable hosted by Weston Equity. Equity in practice, designing safer commercial spaces. Not a token panel. Not a PR stunt. They wanted her to speak, as an authority. Her terms? 1. No media. 2. No cameras. 3. No titles. Just stories. She stood before a dozen executives and said, "This isn't about lawsuits. This is about design. About who you assume belongs in a hallway. about who gets checked by default, about who has to prove they're not a threat just to walk into a room they rented. She paused. You don't need new policies. You need new instincts. Silence. Then someone asked, how do we measure that? Danielle smiled. By who's still working here a year from now? And who's willing to learn? She didn't ask them to clap. She asked them to think. Later that night, she sat in her car a long time before starting it. The lot was empty. The tower behind her glittered with glass. They hadn't said sorry, but they had changed. And sometimes, in this country, that's the louder miracle. It started with a voicemail. Soft voice. Nervous. White noise in the background. Miss Clarke. I hope it's okay I'm reaching out. I heard what happened. My name is Caleb. I interned on 33. I had a similar thing happen last year. Never told anyone. But I saved the footage. Danielle saved the number. By the end of the week, she had 5 more messages. All from different people. Different floors. Same pattern. One woman had been stopped by security twice in one day, even with a badge. A delivery man said he was accused of lurking just for checking the tenant list. Another consultant was questioned for entering the restroom without permission. They weren't looking for attention. They were looking for permission to speak. Danielle created a secure online form. Were you challenged for existing? No names required. Just stories. She expected a handful. She got 34. Most were black. Some Latinx. A few South Asian. But all of them had one thing in common. They had been treated like they didn't belong in a building where they worked. And every single one had stayed silent. Until now. She compiled the data into a private report. Incidents of tenant misidentification, pattern across Class A properties. Send it to Weston Equity, 3 commercial property publications, and, strategically, 1 black business council with lobbying power. She didn't add a cover letter. She didn't need to. The blowback came fast. Not from Weston. From the building itself. 3 days after her report went live, she received a notice. Suite 3421 will be subject to an unscheduled audit for compliance verification. Failure to accommodate may result in penalties under Tenant Clause 9b. She knew what it meant. They couldn't retaliate directly. So they sent paperwork. She smiled. They still didn't get it. She wrote Clause 9b. Literally. Years ago. As a subcontracted consultant for the real estate firm that licensed it. She opened the audit form. And rewrote it. Then sent it back with corrections. In red, attached a PDF titled, Retaliation Risks for Improper Enforcement, Case Study. No threats, just law. Later that night, her phone buzzed again. A new message. But this time, it wasn't fear. It was hope. Miss Clarke, I just wanted to say, thank you. I didn't even know I had the right to question how I was treated. Now I do. Danielle sat in the dark, the phone pressed against her chest. She wasn't leading a movement. She was removing their permission to stay silent. It happened during a property forum luncheon. Danielle had been invited, reluctantly, to join a panel on building equity into commercial design. Half the speakers were legal advisors. The rest? Corporate executives with polished smiles and nervous posture. The audience was polite. The questions, rehearsed. Until the mic passed to the end of the panel. A woman stood. Late 40s. Platinum blazer. Confident. She didn't introduce herself. She didn't need to. Danielle knew the type. The I don't see color type. I just want to say, I think what happened to you is awful, she began. Truly. But do you think there's a risk in making everything about race? I mean, isn't it possible this was just a misunderstanding? A few heads turned. A few didn't. Danielle didn't move. The woman continued. I manage 3 commercial buildings. If we second-guess every security decision, we weaken safety. Isn't there a point where, respectfully, we move on? Silence. The moderator shifted awkwardly. Miss Clarke, would you like to respond? Danielle stood slowly. Took the mic. You're right. We shouldn't make everything about race. The room exhaled. She paused. But this wasn't everything. This was specific. I wasn't questioned. I was restrained. My name was on the door, and they still saw me as a threat. She looked directly at the woman. And safety doesn't start with suspicion. It starts with recognition. If your staff doesn't know what respect looks like in different forms, you don't have security. You have surveillance. A few quiet nods around the room. And if your tenants only feel safe when they look like you, then you're not managing buildings. You're managing exclusion. The woman opened her mouth. But Danielle raised her hand. I'll let you finish. Let me do the same. A pause. Then, the only reason I'm standing here is because I refuse to let people move on from something they never faced to begin with. She handed the mic back to the moderator and sat down. No applause. Just quiet. But in that quiet, something cracked. Not in Danielle. In the room. Later that evening, as the forum wound down, a young man approached her. Mid-20s. Janitorial batch. You didn't know this, he whispered. But I saw what happened that day. I was on shift. I didn't know if I should say anything. Danielle nodded gently. You just did. He smiled. Not because he had changed the world, but because, for the first time, he felt allowed to see it clearly. The envelope came by courier. Heavy stock. No logo. Just her name, handwritten in black ink. Danielle Clarke. She opened it slowly. Inside, a letter from Mason Holdings' legal team. 3 pages. Polite. Precise. Carefully worded. At the bottom, a number. $475,000. No NDA. No silence clause. Just a final offer of resolution. The letter called it a goodwill gesture. Danielle called it something else. A price. A price for being right. A price for not filing the lawsuit they expected. A price for the policies they had rewritten because of her. A price for the silence she had refused to give them. She read it twice, then a third time, and didn't smile. That night, she sat on her balcony with a legal pad on her lap. At the top, she wrote 2 words. Cost versus value. Under cost, she listed burnout, isolation, lost time, emotional exhaustion, safety risks. Under value, she listed policy change, tenant awareness, staff retraining, public acknowledgement, dignity. Then she added one more line beneath both. And still no apology. The next morning, she met with her attorney, a sharp woman named Keisha Langston. If you want to take it, I'll negotiate up, Keisha said. They expect you to push back. Danielle nodded slowly. And if I don't? Then we file. And it gets loud. Danielle exhaled. She wasn't afraid of loud. She was afraid of letting it in quietly. What if I do both? Keisha raised an eyebrow. Meaning? We reject the settlement. But instead of court. I use their money without permission. Keisha leaned in. Danielle smiled. I don't need a check. I need momentum. And I've got a list of 5 young black professionals trying to lease downtown, all denied for insufficient business history. I want to build a fund. Legal prep. Leasing advisory. Soft capital. Give them what no one gave me. Keisha grinned. Call it Clark's Clause. Danielle chuckled. I was thinking something less obvious. But maybe it fits. She wrote her reply to Mason by hand. Thank you for your offer. I decline. I've already been paid in change. The kind you can't subtract. She didn't sign it with a title. Just a name. Because that name was already enough. 1 year later, the building had changed. New reception staff. Updated protocols. A glass placard near the elevators now read, Tenants first. Equity, safety, dignity. No one mentioned her name, but her initials were on the policy draft. In small print. Just like she wanted. Suite 3421 still belonged to Clarke and Associates. But now it held more than desks and monitors. It held files, 37 of them, each with the name of a young black entrepreneur who had applied for space in the downtown district and been denied. Some for credit, some for lack of presence, some for nothing at all. Danielle's fund, unofficial, unannounced, had helped 16 of them secure new leases. 5 had opened doors in her own building. 3 had returned just to thank her. Not with flowers. With invoices. Signed. Paid. Legitimate. She smiled when she saw their names on the tenant list. Not because they owed her, but because they no longer owed permission to anyone. On a Thursday afternoon, she stepped into the elevator. A young woman was already inside. Nervous. Clutching a small binder. Startup energy. Danielle gave a polite nod. The woman glanced at her badge, then widened her eyes. Wait. Are you Clarke? Danielle blinked. I'm Danielle. Sorry, I read about the fund. I'm on the 28th. They said you helped Ms. Aladil. She's my cousin. Danielle smiled faintly. She helped herself. I just moved the paperwork. The elevator dinged. Danielle stepped out. But before the doors closed, the woman said, You made space. That matters. Danielle didn't turn around. Just said softly, Make more. That night, she finally unpacked a small wooden box she'd kept sealed since the incident. Inside, her broken laptop, the scuffed heel she'd lost that day, the badge from her blazer, bit from where the guard had grabbed her, and the original room reservation printout. She didn't cry. She didn't rage. She just folded the paper, placed it back in the box, and taped it shut. Labeled it proof. I was always supposed to be there. Then slid it onto a shelf behind her desk. Not to remember what they did to her, but to remind herself what they couldn't take. Her name, her pace, her space, and most of all, her terms. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that inspire action and hope.